just welcome on stage now for a very interesting keynote about social ads and what you have to, the 14 takeaways of the year. We welcome on stage the co-founder and chief operating officer of Unruly, Miss Sarah Woods. Please welcome Sarah Woods.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. Cheers. Oh, it's so good to be here today, and it's so good to be talking on the digital transformation stage, because if there's one industry that has truly been transformed and is continuing to be transformed by digital, it's advertising. You know, what used to work on TV, all that interrupted broadcast messaging, just doesn't work for social. And the brands that are really winning and benefiting from the digital transformation are the ones that recognize that. They're creating content and they're distributing content that's built for social media. And we're going to be celebrating some of that today. At Unruly, we're a global platform for social video advertising. We've been tracking video sharing since we founded back in 2006. We've got 13 offices across 10 countries now. We've run thousands of campaigns. We work with 83% of the Ad Age 100 brands. We're really proud to work with the brands that get social and understand the importance of creating contagious content and then distributing it as though it warrants being watched and shared. So, every story at Unruly starts with a video. This is no different. So before we kick off with all the data and the stats and the trends, I'd like you guys to choose what video we're going to watch. An important thing about social video is it's not anti-social video. So it's not forcing people to watch stuff they don't want to watch. It's about putting the user, the viewer, in control. So you guys are in control. We've got 2 videos to choose from. The first one is Puppy Love, and this is the most shared ad of the Super Bowl. Super Bowl being one of those moments in the calendar when advertising really is the hero content. No, Stefan, not yet. No. No interruptive advertising. We're waiting for the guys to choose. So that's the first one that we're not playing yet. And then the second option is called Devil Baby. And this is the most shared movie trailer or movie promo of the year. So you've got a choice. It's either Puppy Love, which is the Super Bowl, or it's Devil Baby, which is the most shared movie trailer. We'll do a hands up. So hands up if you want to watch Puppy Love. Okie dokie. And hands up if you want to watch Devil Baby. Ha-ha, cruel, sadistic crowd. OK, Stefan, can we play out Devil Baby Attack, please? OK, so quick thing about that. So that was the most shared ad of the Super Bowl. Super Bowl sharing was actually down this year. It was down by 29%, despite the fact that sharing overall has increased by 22% over the same period year on year. So that was very interesting. And it bucked the trend. Fewer funny videos succeeded this year. And in fact, funny was really out of fashion this year. In the top 20 video ads of the whole of 2014, only 2 out of 20 hit the trigger of hilarious. Last year, it was 8 out of 20. So there's been a big shift in the way that brands are connecting with their audiences. So here are 14 facts that we saw this year. 17.9% of the global population became super sharers. What is a super sharer? Super sharer is someone who shares video content at least once a week, and often more often. Often 8.7% share daily. So that's 17.9% of us were sharing videos frequently, more than once a week. Interesting to note, though, that 38% are still not sharing videos. So whenever you meet people and they go, well, I don't share video. Yeah, that's fair enough. They're one of the third that still aren't sharing. So what's interesting about these super sharers is that they drive a lot of the viral spread. So as a brand, as an advertiser, if you're looking for a media, if you're looking for advocacy, if you're looking for word of mouth and peer-to-peer recommendation, then you'll be looking for social. You'll be looking for viral spread. And what we see is the Pareto principle pretty much applies with video as it does with so much else in the world. So we see that 81.9% of shares are delivered by that small 17.9%, whatever it was, 18% of the audience. So roughly it's 20-80. 20% of the people delivering 80% of the shares. So important if you're wanting to maximize viral peak, slow viral decay, to be hitting those super sharers. This was a really interesting year for one key reason. Up until this year, Zuckerberg's law of sharing had held. And how many of you are familiar with Zuckerberg's law of sharing? So this is something coined by Zuckerberg to say that sharing was growing exponentially, doubling year on year. And we saw this right the way through from 2006. We have the biggest data set of video sharing behavior. So we see a lot of videos being shared. And we've seen this exponential growth, not just of music videos, not just of videos in your bedroom, but of brand videos through 2006. We'd seen it right through to the end of 2013. And then something really interesting happened. And it's what we're thinking of as being content shock. And this is first theorized to my knowledge at the beginning of January by blogger Mark Schaefer, who talked about the limited bandwidth. And it's not technological bandwidth that's holding us back. It's psychological, it's mental bandwidth. There's so much content being created, we can't take anymore. We've reached our limits. If you think about 300 hours of videos being uploaded to YouTube every minute, 25 million posts created by marketers every 24 hours, that's you guys. I'm sure some of you in here creating that, this avalanche of content. And what it means is it's harder than ever before for brands to cut through, because they're not just competing with other brands, they're competing with families, with friends, in the news feed, in the social feeds. And that's made it more challenging for brands who really want to break through and capture attention. So we saw shares were up, so absolute number of sharing, rising, continuing to rise, not exponentially, but still rising, getting higher, but the share rate's down. Share rate's down for brand content, share rate's down for UGC. And this is as more content being created, potentially you might say less high quality content, TV content just being ported across for digital. And content that isn't necessarily made for sharing. There are all kinds of KPIs that you can have with video. But what are those brands going to do, and what do they do this year to get cut through? We saw one big shift, which was brands getting emotional. We saw far fewer videos using cognitive appeal. And when we track videos, we measure all kinds of sharing variables. We have a product called ShareRank, which is predictive. It's a predictive algorithm. So we know who's going to share the video, where they're going to share it, why they're going to share it, how shared it's going to be. So we get a real good sense of what the trends are in terms of those triggers that are being used. Cognitive triggers down, emotional triggers up. And we'll look in a little while at what those triggers were this year. Exhilaration was one of the key triggers. We thought we might see a lot of exhilarating content in 2014. It's a World Cup year, and tentpole events often attract the tentpole content, and sporting events often bring out the most exhilarating, exciting content that brands have got to offer. And a party in Brazil, well, we knew this wasn't going to disappoint. You've got Brazil, which is the social media capital of the world, according to the Wall Street Journal. You've got a global sporting event that even the US are part of, so it had massive potential to deliver fantastic content. The reason I'm picking up on exhilaration in particular, this is a good trigger for many brands to use, because done well, high arousal, exhilarating content delivers the highest levels of brand recall. And we always say to brands, it's not just about sharing. Don't just think about social reactions, think about the business value that you want to drive, and think about how people feel about the product and how much more likely they are to buy the product as a result of watching. So exhilaration performs the best of all the emotional triggers. Funny comes in second with 51%. So, number 7, we had a milestone moment, which was we had a new most shared ad of all time. Who knows what the most shared ad of all time was up until this year? You'd have to shout so loud. I'll fill in the answer. It was VW The Force, which was from the 2011 Super Bowl. So right from 2011 up until this summer, that remained the most shared ad. Really iconic piece of advertising. This year with the World Cup, not only was the World Cup the most shared event of all time from a brand perspective, so delivered more on social than any other event has ever done, but it delivered the most shared ad. Activia and Shakira came together in a partnership to create what we call TrackVert. La 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 became the most shared ad of all time. So an interesting ad, the Shakira and Activia partnership, because it embodies a lot of trends. First of all, it's a World Cup ad, so it's kind of a perfect storm of social there. You've got a really strong zeitgeist moment. You've got a track that's sung by Colombian pop princess who really has authenticity around the World Cup, because last time around she was singing the official anthem. And it had a really kind of long sharing tail as well. It wasn't just the peak. It shared time and again at various moments during the World Cup campaign. And it was very on trend in terms of trackvertising. We've seen an increased number of brands working with bands, with musicians this year, and launching videos in partnership with each other. It's really sensible, really smart, partly because it can help with copyright issues, so it alleviates those worries. Secondly, because music videos tend to get more shared than other types of videos. So the average share rate on music videos is over 7%. And they also have very different sharing cycle, very different life cycle, and can be much more evergreen. So really smart move for brands to get involved in advertising, and Shakira embodied that. Celebs bombed at the Super Bowl. Something hasn't changed this year. We look every year for correlations between shareability and celebrity, and the data just does not provide the evidence. We work with academics from Wharton, from Harvard Business School, from Ehrenberg Bass, from Cass over in London. They comb through the data, they disentangle the data points, they look for what drives shareability. We don't see a link between celebrities in videos and shareability of the video. When it comes down to it, we prefer watching ordinary people doing extraordinary things rather than watching celebrities. And Super Bowl proved that out this year. You know, Toyota featuring Terry Crews, Chrysler featuring Bob Dylan, delivered very little sharing. And disappointingly, the Chrysler and Bob Dylan ad was a bit of a shocker. In terms of brand recall, when we did the studies on this ad, it was found that only 7% of people realized it was a Chrysler ad, 4% of people thought it was for Ford, and 12% of people thought it was an ad for the city of Detroit. So yeah, that's a big budget to spend on Dylan, and not even to get the brand recognition there. One really awesome, explosive, controversial trend this year that's delivered a lot of sharing has been fempowerment ads. Now, Shakira also ties into this trend. The Shakira ad was launched in partnership with the World Food Programme. And when we press released that ad as being the most shared ad of all time, it was really interesting talking to the brand about their KPIs and how they'd met them. The KPIs weren't about sales of yogurt. The KPIs were about donations to the World Food Programme. So this tying of brands and social good and a move towards cause-driven, purpose-driven marketing has really come to fruition in 2014. And I'm confident we'll see a lot more of it. We saw a lot of it this Christmas, the most shared Christmas ads. John Lewis, Sainsbury's have both been in partnership with long-standing charities that those brands have been working with. But back to fempowerment. This is such an exciting year for feminism. A new wave of feminism, all kinds of moments throughout the year when women have just refused to be smacked down. Emma Watson refused to be smacked down. The campaign to get the woman on the British pound note, that campaign succeeded, and then when the MP was trolled, the trolls were jailed. So we've seen many moments during the year of women standing up and saying, we will not be smacked down, and brands have very much followed suit. And I think this is one way that we do see a transformation is brands, rather than broadcasting to their audiences, listening to them, taking on their concerns, and starting to reflect back those worries and anxieties and needs. Always Like a Girl from P&G was a great example of this. This was a T-shirt ad. Under Armour have done some fantastic campaigns this year, really placing women, girls, and girl power in the spotlight. So when we slice and dice all the data, we're always hoping to debunk lots of cultural myths. And sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't. And this year, we saw some global trends when it comes to emotional triggers. We saw that funny ads were there. They were there in the US and the UK, but they didn't feature anywhere near as strongly as they usually do. We saw Brazil, exhilaration was the most successful of all triggers, and we saw happiness resonated around the globe. So all in all, kind of a happy, uplifting year. But with obviously lots of exceptions, subcurrents, countercultures, whenever you get kind of a predominant cultural mood running, it really encourages subcurrents to come in and subvert it. So we saw plenty of that. Where we did see big differences and continuing differences is in the social motivations that get people sharing. So there's over 100 variables that we track for share rank when we're predicting shareability. But the two key areas that drive sharing is one, the intensity of emotional connection. So you need a really strong, powerful connection. You're thinking tears rolling down your cheeks, hairs on the back of your neck, a physiological response. And then the second area is social motivations. This is things like kudos, zeitgeist, wanting to be optimally differentiated, so wanting to feel that you are a person with something to say, but also part of a group, part of a tribe. They're all altruism, social utility. There's loads of different social motivations for sharing, and they really do vary. They vary by demography, they vary by territory, and here we saw Southeast Asia, driven especially by social motivations. The UK, social utility was the most successful of all the triggers, so very practical. And in Brazil, it was zeitgeist. In terms of speed of sharing and social diffusion, that's also really variable. And in 2014, we saw some interesting trends. We saw the UK with the highest share rate. We saw Germany, Germans staying longest with the content. So not necessarily as much sharing, but more completion, longer dwell times. And in South Korea, we saw the fastest social diffusion by far. Talking about speed, so the other big change that we saw this year was the speed of sharing doubled. And there are moments, there are kind of inflection points when you see certain technologies having an impact on advertising, on marketing. And this really was finally the year of mobile, certainly in terms of consumption and interaction and engagement. So viewers were taking a much more always-on approach towards their video consumption and sharing. And as a result, we saw big increase in the number of shares happening in the early days of a campaign. So here you go, if you look, 2013, it's the red line. You can see quarter of all shares took place in the first 3 days. Fast forward to 2014 so far, and you see 42% of shares took place in the first 3 days. This has massive implications for advertisers, because you can't afford to just put out a bit of content, hope it's going to get picked up, hope it's going to be surfaced, and then expect the PR to come rolling in. So for brands who want operational success, who want repeatable, scalable success, it's very much about safety-proofing those first launch days, using paid media, and that's what we do at Unruly. We have paid video distribution that uses first-party data to make sure we're maximizing this viral peak, targeting the super sharers, using the data that we have across all the different territories to make sure we're reaching the people who are going to spread the word, and then extending this, so slowing the viral decay. And making as much as possible of those early days in the campaign. And that's it for the trends of 2014. What are we going to see next year? There's lots to be excited about. I think we might see a backlash to sadvertising. So one of the key emotions that we saw this year was sadness, lots of brands making us cry. That's not going to last for long. I think we're feeling emotionally wrung out. So with changes to the parody law as well in the UK, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see a lot more satirical videos coming through next year. We're going to see much more mobile video. Brands have got a big focus on this. And I'll be really interested to see how geofencing affects the type of videos that are created. And what will brands do when they can talk to and communicate with their audiences when they're stood in front of their product in the supermarket. Maybe we're going to see a renaissance of the product video, the product demo, all to be revealed in 2015. But I really hope that you've enjoyed this whistle-stop tour through 2014. Thanks, guys.
Sarah, wait. Stay with me.
Oh, sorry.
I've got really interesting questions for you.
Oh, go for it.
A couple of them. OK. Are there any stats about how much is shared through anonymous social networks? Could this impact on the trend?
That's a really good point. So the data we're collecting is data aggregated from email, from various networks, so such as Twitter, Facebook. A lot of the sharing still happens on Facebook, 2/3 on average across the blogosphere. And then on campaigns, it depends on what the target platforms are. Absolutely, yes, we are seeing already more videos being shared anonymously. And we're seeing much more narrowcast sharing. So it used to be all about the broadcast, the big moment. We're seeing lots more brands thinking really carefully about custom sharing and targeting just the people they want to reach in just the place they want to reach them.
That's the second question is like, so how high is average engagement with the super sharer post? Is there a special class of super sharers that represent 80% of that engagement, 80-20?
So that completely depends on the content and the context and the audience. So super sharers, and we've got lots of first-party data segments that we use. Super sharers are the generic super sharers. And if you want to make a big noise, they're great to be targeting, but they may not be the people that are going to specifically generate interaction with your post. So often we look at custom sharers, and these are the sharers that are most likely to share your content specifically. And it's often those custom sharers that generate subsequent engagement and second, third, and fourth generation sharing activity. That's
impressive. I think we have a last one. Are you able to track the amount of money brands pay for promoting videos?
So we know what brands are spending with us, and we work with most of the big brands, so we see where the paid media goes. We don't track globally what brands are spending on their paid video, If only we had all that sales data. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, pleasure. And guys, I'm really sorry about the devil baby, because I know a lot of you are wanting to see that. So I'm going to share that on Twitter afterwards. And for those of you who want to watch a vomiting baby wreak havoc on the streets of New York, it'll be on Twitter.
Thank you.
Cheers.
You can go this way, or I take the clicker.
Thank you.